Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another episode of Islam for Europeans. I'm your host, Robert. Please like and subscribe to the channel. So, I wanted to respond to a tweet recently from our brother Sneako. And, this video is, addressed specifically to our brother Sneako. Assalamu alaikum, Sneako. Hope you're doing well and you're doing fine. And may Allah bless you for all the work that you do. But one of the tweets, kind of corresponds exactly, to some of the questioning or, that we get, or kind of the same realm that, for the things we talk about at Islam for Europeans. Now, for those who follow my channel, we already know the answers to these questions. We've discussed them in detail. But I thought I would make a standalone video, just specifically for this tweet because, Seiko is such a huge figure, especially now after his conversion. So Sneako says in his tweet, Islam could fix every predicament of WR. We don't know what that means. uh, Basically, white replacement. The men could have 4 wives and 10 kids each. The women could ditch feminism for family, alcohol, usury, gambling, drugs, the plagues of the middle class eradicated, but Zionists brainwash them to think it's for terrorists. So, Sneako is controversial as always, but I'll start out by saying what he's saying is technically correct. Islam can, fix all of these problems. Now, you're never going to totally fix uh, all of a society's problems via Islam because human beings are fallible. We make mistakes, we commit sins. We want to strive for that. This is the religion that God has given to us, that has blessed us with. He's given us the Quran, and he's given us the teachings and sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But if you look at any Muslim country in the world, there are things that have greatly helped them with Islam. But again, there's going to be problems everywhere. And this is because at the end of the day, we're human beings. We make mistakes. Not everyone is going to be religious either. But it definitely serves as a bulwark or a solution to many of the problems that Sneako's talking about. Right. So theoretically he's correct, but practically speaking, this is not going to happen unless there's a dramatic shift or change in the way that Muslims think about born Muslims in the West think about what their role is in society in the West, and also the white converts themselves. Because I've been Muslim for 21 years, and in those 21 years, I've seen many people come and go. People take their shahada. The mosque doesn't really know what to do with them. They don't know what to provide for him. They end up throwing money at the problem. And, usually you don't see these people anymore. Uh, you know, I've been going to Juma prayer for the last couple of years now, since 2021. And 99% of the time, I'm the only convert there. Maybe once in a while I'll see another one or two, but, it's sad. And there's a lot of structural reasons why that is. Now, a good way to think about this is, why did this happen with other groups? Why did other groups convert to Islam en masse as a group? Not their entire population, but at least a segment of their population, and improve their society, basically. And the largest example of this by far in the West is our African American brothers and sisters to Islam. They converted to Islam as a group. At the time, there were several stepping stones, obviously. The originally, were part of the Nation of Islam, which was a heretical sect. At the time, many of them were largely unaware that this was not the true Islam, but it did serve as like a stepping stone. Many of the moral frameworks and teachings, that are in, Islam themselves is also, in parts, also was also the Nation of Islam. Eventually, they converted en masse to Sunni Islam after the unfortunate death of our brother Malcolm X. But they converted Islam as a group first and foremost, which I think is absolutely essential. Because if you have a setup like you have where born Muslims make up the overwhelming majority of Muslims in a certain country, and the people who convert to Islam, they don't form their own groups. What happens is that born Muslims by and large, they don't interact with the greater society. As you know, they tend to stick to their own enclaves. They don't watch the same sports. They don't go to the same events. They don't. Maybe they might have one or two non-Muslim friends, but it's not the same level of type of relationship that a community may have, where they stick together and whatnot. So, you know, uh, converts today in the West, especially white converts, since they don't have this kind of like, kind of sub community that the African American Muslims did, they end up having to latch on to, a mainly immigrant community. And, this is not to denigrate, born Muslims living in the West, whether they're immigrants or first gen or second gen, but that could be very difficult for most people who convert to Islam because the culture is totally different. You're in a totally different situation than Muslims living in the West. You as a convert, as a white convert. So that's one thing. We don't have any type of sub community. Also, the whole idea of like a European Muslim or like like when you think of there are South Asian Muslims, they have like an identity. That if you see South Asians, it's probable that many of them are already Muslim. When a South Asian person converts to Islam, like maybe from a Hindu or a Sikh background, it's not, you know, a complete rejection of their identity. Well, I mean, maybe if they're Hindu, but I mean, at least culturally, there's a large group of people from that region of the world that's already Muslim. Same thing with Arabs. Like their whole history is with Islam, right? So, like the majority of there's many Arabs in the Muslim world who are already Muslim. It's been embedded in their culture. The language, the cuisine, the architecture. Same goes for African Muslim. So there's like an African Muslim identity. Uh, there's an Asian Muslim identity in some parts. Like for example, Indonesia, Malaysia. So the idea of a European Muslim, unless you're talking about Bosnia or Albania, it doesn't really exist as a concept in people's heads, right? So, and that's why you see a lot of people on the left saying, once you convert to Islam, you're not white anymore. Um, so that you have that there. It just doesn't even exist as a concept. There's no idea of the collectivizing. Also, you have to keep in mind that Muslims in the West, especially Muslim leadership, uh, the idea of Muslim unity. They want a united Muslim ummah, right? They see the fall of the Ottoman Empire as the complete downfall of the Muslim world. Colonial powers, divided countries up like Swiss cheese. So they're very obsessed with having a unified Muslim ummah, but they take it to such an extreme that the people who come in to convert to Islam, the idea of them collectivizing or forming their own organization in any way, shape, or form is usually seen as dividing the Muslim ummah, right? And then we have to look at also the political situation of Muslims living in the West. Muslims up until now have I guess as a political bloc has kind of allied themselves with the left, or at least at the very least not entertain any idea of allying with the right, for obvious reasons. But the many of the people who convert to Islam, from a European background, already kind of have these kind of leftist ideas to begin with. Not many of them are like read they're not right wing normally. They don't read Evola. They don't read Renee Guénon. So the most of the white converts lean left politically, so they're not going to think about forming these types of have this kind of collective idea because the whole idea of for them Europeans collectivizing in any way, shape, or form, even if it's for the betterment of the image of Islam in the West. It's almost like a black hole will open up in the sky. Just even thinking about something like that, right? So, and Europeans, Western Europeans, they tend to be very individualistic to begin with, right? So, this idea of like forming this kind of collective group in the same way that African Americans did. It's not something that they want to do. And finally, there's many, we can go on and on and on, but the vast majority of institutions, Islamic institutions, are already existing. They're already there. These mosques are already built, or Islamic organizations already exist. So why build more? I mean, that's one of the questions that often get posed to us, right? But like I said, theoretically, if Europeans converted to Islam en masse, this would solve a lot of these problems. That doesn't happen. But again, Europeans are converting to Islam. There's been a 400% increase in people converting to Islam in the West, since October 2023. But the fact of the matter is, there's no structure in place to even just ameliorate the situation of these converts. And we've seen this before for the last 20 years. I mean, this is nothing new. Um, the top five problems faced by converts in the West are loneliness, managing the relationship with your non-Muslim family, a steep learning curve, overcoming addictions, um, and what's the other one? Trying to think of the other one. Managing. Anyway, those are four of them. But mosques are simply not designed to fix those problems. Like perfect example. You convert to Islam, your family's totally against you. What is a mosque going to do? They may say, well, have your family come to the mosque. What if they don't want to go to a mosque, right? Is the imam going to take the initiative to come over to your house and talk to your family, with your dad drinking beer and your mom, wearing like shorts, heavy metal music playing in the background. You have two, three dogs. They're not going to go there, right? So it just, and even if you did, even if you were to lock them all into the same room together, it might backfire. That type of conversation may range from anything from awkward silence to, an argument about colonialism, right? So mosques are not designed to help with these problems. So like I get this. So what needs to happen basically? I mean, the people who convert to Islam, let's talk about specifically about Europe proper. They need to form their own organizations, their own restaurants, their own barbershops. They need to have this wolf pack mentality. Because no one's gonna look out for them when they're in their own territory, right? The bored Muslims in Europe, they don't want to even venture into that territory, right? At most, that what they'll do is they'll keep agitating, that territory, making it even worse or more difficult for those converts. Um, but that's basically what needs to happen. If you have that type of sub community structure in place, what will happen is it'll make it easier for someone who converts to Islam from a European background to survive, basically, to be able to practice their religion, to like improve their relationship with their family, right? So and you really need to point. We really need to point this out as Muslims living in the West is that another big reason why you don't see this kind of like en masse conversion or group conversion of Europeans to Islam is that the reaction from their families and their communities is so harsh, that something like this can never get off the ground. I mean, how can you create an organization for European descendant Muslims when you're getting kicked out of your house, when you're getting written out of the will, when you're getting fired from your job, when you're getting called a traitor? So this just pushes people away, and it makes it very difficult to even, for example, to marry another European convert from a European background, because not only do you have to deal with one family that doesn't like Muslims, you have to deal with two families that don't like Muslims, right? So we need to point out this paradox as much as humanly possible, because if you look at the right, the right in Europe, like the dissident right, their main qualm is that they're going to become a hated minority in their own homelands within a generation, right? The main qualm from the anti-Islam right is just basically Islam. It doesn't matter, about immigration. They don't care about any of that. It's just if people from Muslim countries move to Europe and they convert out of Islam, then we're okay with that, right? And they definitely wouldn't like European converts, but these two groups hate each other. They don't really like each other all that much. But we need to point out constantly, the more you hate on Islam, the worse it is for your demographic situation. I mean, imagine that we change the game. We have European Muslim communities all throughout Europe, and the European population increases incrementally, and like we could like born Muslims from a non-European background could look at this, go, hey, well, we're actually helping preserve the original people and their culture via Islam. So it would completely flip the script on the image of Islam in the West. And then you can use that as a bargaining chip, for the safety and security of all Muslims living in the West. Um, but no one really sees it that way at this point. So I think we really need to rethink about how we deal with converts, right? I mean, if we keep talking about theoretically they should convert to Islam and so on and so forth, but many people aren't even at the point. They're at the pre-contemplation mode. If you ask them to convert to Islam, they won't do it. All we're asking at this point is, if you don't want to convert to Islam, that's completely your decision. All we're saying is that your son or your daughter converts to Islam, don't kick them out of the house, don't write them out of the will, don't fire them. Just say, look, we respect your decision. Don't become like don't start wearing Arab dress. And when the time is right, let's help you find a good Euro brother or Euro sister to marry. Right. So that's basically my message to brother Sneako. I would love to be on Sneako's channel. We're a tiny channel here. We kind of only have like a cult following, but I do think that a lot of the things he talks about, I think we'd find very interesting. I think it would make for a very interesting conversation. So that's my time for the day. Oh, my final point is about the whole polygamy thing. Again, I think as an optics thing, it's not really necessary to bring up polygamy at this point. I mean, you're trying to give dawah to Europeans. Polygamy has not been in their culture. I mean, technically speaking, yes, polygamy, is halal. You can have up to 4 wives if you're a Muslim man, but there are very strict guidelines to that. You have to be able to financially support them all. You have to treat them equally. And in 2024, what convert, let alone any Muslim, has the funds to be able to do that? I mean, a lot of these converts Islam can very barely take care of themselves. Polygamy it's practiced in the Muslim world, but at a very low rate. I mean, polygamy rates in all throughout the Muslim world only range from like 1 to like 3%. So, it's not a norm. And again, it's not necessary to convert to Islam. This is, it's not like it becomes like a red herring, basically. If you keep bringing up these things like polygamy and all these things, even though it's halal, there's nothing wrong with it. But like we're not even at that stage. We're at stage one. Are you going to be okay with your son or daughter's conversion to Islam, basically? So that's my time for the day. Hope you enjoyed this video. And yes, like I said to Brother Sneako, more than willing to be on your show. It would be a tremendous shot in the arm for the channel, and I think it would make for some stimulating conversation. But that's my time for the day. I'm Robert from Islam for Europeans. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.